Assalamu alaikum. My name is Mohammad Farhan Khan. I'm CFO Allied Bank. I would like to welcome the distinguished guest, Honorable Chairman FBR, Dr. Muhammad Irshad, leading income tax practitioners, Dr. Ikram and Mrs. Huzaima Bukhari, Member Tax Reform Commission, Mr. Masood Ali Naqvi, Council members of ICAP, ICMA, representatives of SBP, SECP, Tax Bar, Chamber of Commerce, and representative of various professional and credit rating firms, valued obligors of Allied Bank, for taking time out of your busy schedule and coming for this important seminar on private sector credit and growth in tax revenue. Before we proceed on the seminar, I would like to give a brief on Allied Bank. We are the fourth largest private bank, and we are actively serving our valued customers through 1150 branches and 1150 ATMs across Pakistan. Private sector credit and its impact on macro development is far-reaching, and unfortunately in Pakistan, private sector credit growth is at alarmingly low level compared to regional peers. Now, to formally begin the seminar, I would like to request Mr. Tahir Hassan Qureshi to come on the dais and give a brief presentation on the caption topic. Mr. Tahir Hassan Qureshi.
Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. I, on behalf of Allied Bank Management and Board of Directors, thank you, FBR Chairman Dr. Irshad Sahab, Masood Naqvi Sahab, Dr. Ikram Sahab, Madam Huzaima Bukhari Sahiba, all the distinguished guests from the profession, business community. I welcome you on this seminar. The topic is very important, that is private sector credit and growth in tax revenue. Dr. Sahab, it is very important for the country to have on the path of sustainable growth if we can expand our credit to GDP ratio. And in this regard, as we all know that undocumented economy size is much bigger as compared to the documented economy. And this undocumented economy is not contributing to the revenue generation for the government. When we meet in the board of directors for devising the future strategy for the bank for the next 10 years, board asked us why loan to deposit ratio is going down, why the banks are investing in government securities, why credit to private sector is not increasing. Then our board, under the leadership of our chairman, advised us to have a comparison of regional as well as developed countries' credit to GDP ratio. And we should compare where do we stand as a nation with reference to credit to GDP ratio in that comparison. It was surprising to note that ours is the lowest in the region so far as credit to GDP ratio is concerned, and I'll show it to you in the presentation. Dr. Sahab, we have a corporate social responsibility policy under which we take various initiatives, and that includes also those initiatives where we can contribute in nation building initiatives. And one of those initiatives is this seminar where we are presenting these certain important facts and sharing it with you. On the first slide, we have tried to share with you that where we stand in terms of percentage of credit to GDP ratio. If we look at the private sector credit, which is one of the lowest in the world, in the developed countries, it is more than 100% of GDP like USA, UK. And if we review the regional countries like Bangladesh, India, even Sri Lanka, Indonesia, including Malaysia, above the Pakistan's credit to GDP ratio, which is only 15%. This is the trend of private sector credit. If you see that in 70, it was 25% of GDP, and then in 1980, it was 23%, though the GDP was very small at that time. But now, if the GDP is growing, but the credit to GDP ratio is going down, that is 15%. We tried to understand the reasons for this lower credit to GDP ratio. Our total GDP in US dollar terms is 271 billion, out of which only $51 billion is through formal credit, and the rest of the amount, that is 220 billion, is through informal credit. And this informal credit is available for the business community at the interest rate of as high as 30 to 60%. Whereas for the banking sector, we lend money in present circumstances at 6% to 8%. Most of the areas where informal credit is available through RTs, commission agents, private money lenders, suppliers credits, landlords, shopkeepers, communities, and relatives and friends. We also try to explain why the informal credit is going up as compared to the formal credit, and the reasons are enumerated here. There are certain lack of access of formal financial services because of lack of proper documentation, history, and lack of collateral, which means borrowers have no sound collaterals for lending requirements, and there are much more areas where the perception of taxation authorities is negative. Recently, State Bank of Pakistan with the federal government has devised a national financial inclusion strategy, and that requires revolutionary steps to be taken by the Federal Board of Revenue. And we have recently met with Alibaba Group President Mr. Michael, and Dr. Irshad was also present in that meeting. And he was also of the view that if we want to expand documented economy, we have to take revolutionary steps in terms of taxation incentives, and that is the key for the growth in GDP through formal credit. This is the main slide where we want to show you the multi-dimensional revenue generation potential which banking industry can generate if we increase our formal credit to GDP ratio. Today at total GDP is 271 billion, whereas the total banking loan is only 51 billion. So the total informal credit comes out to be $220 billion. If we assume that potential credit is $200 billion, we can easily generate additional tax at 10% profit margin for the private sector at a taxation rate of 30%, and the amount, additional tax amount would be 640 billion. And the second dimension of this potential increase in credit to GDP ratio is through banking industry's profitability. If we lend this additional potential credit to the private sector with a spread of 2% only and at a taxation rate of 35%, we can pay additional 150 billion in terms of income tax to the FBR. And the third dimension of credit to GDP ratio growth is through depositors withholding tax. If we assume that all this money have 65% mix from the remunerative deposits, and we pay at a 5% of profit rate to those depositors, we can deduct 70 billion tax from those depositors. And in aggregate, we can generate further tax revenue of 864 billion, and that is 28% of the latest target of the financial year 2015-16. So 28% we can further generate if we convert informal credit to formal credit through banking channel. So these are the numbers which we have just tried to show you from three dimensions. There are further dimensions you can see from there, because we can provide incremental jobs, we can increase trade business for the economy, and ultimately we have not factored in dividend income to the investors, which is another amount which can be added to this revenue. So this seminar's main objective is just to share with you that we are available, particularly Allied Bank is available to assist FBR, federal government, in formulation of policies whereby we can go for growth of formal credit instead of going for the informal credit in the businesses. And I think this can be further discussed, deliberated. Whenever the FBR team wishes, we can available in all respect. We can provide assistance, we can provide professional support to the FBR to work out a solution in this regard. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tahir, for a very insightful presentation on the state of formal credit. Ladies and gentlemen, Pakistan today has 85% unbanked population, and besides potential enhanced tax collection, if we expand formal credit, I think it would certainly play a major role in eradicating the financial exclusion of the mass majority of our population. And whenever there is credit expansion, it leads to job creation. And with rising young population in the country, I think formal credit expansion is one of the critical areas where policy making and long-term planning needs to be focused at. Now I would like to request Mr. Honorable Chairman FBR, Dr. Mohammad Irshad Sahab, to say a few words on the topic under discussion. Dr. Irshad, please.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Very honorable my brother Dr. Ikram and my sister Ozema, very honorable member of the Tax Reform Commission, Masood Naqvi Sahab, and a very close elder of mine, Tahir Sahab, all luminaries from the chartered accountancy and the banking sector. First of all, I'm very grateful, sir, for inviting me for this great occasion to speak to the professionals. I'll always be scared to enter into the areas of which the masters and the experts of the country are sitting. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you that banks in Pakistan are the second largest contributor to the revenue. And we respect banking sector for the reason that they are one of the most compliant and documented sector. We in FBR has a major problem of the undocumented economy, the cash economy, or for these reasons, it's very difficult to tax even very affluent and visible flow of money, which is somehow escaping the taxation charge. Since the subject today is the credit, private credit by the banks, I think first of all, I'm very grateful and I'm really delighted to know that in the private sector, the masters of this art, like Dr. Ikram is in, who perhaps is arranging all these workshops to get into the solutions to the national problems. I appreciate the role of this forum for pointing out an area which is a serious problem. And if I share with you, in a very important place, there was a criticism on the banking sector that they earn from the T-bills and the government instrument. They do not invest in the private sector. And the issue which I had heard from the other side, I am pleased to listen it from the banking sector, espousing the cause. There is no two opinions that private sector loaning is one of the major stimulus to accelerating the economic growth. And above all, this is an essential way to approach for the financial inclusion. You may be earning more, but if you are excluding the poor in every income that we are earning, we as a nation are surely digging our own grave for ourselves. We have so many problems. Ladies and gentlemen, I am going to join another subject of the matter, another meeting on the subject as to how to evolve a system in this country where FBR receives policy input for reforming our legal, our regulatory, our policy, our procedural frameworks. Most of the time, we are all at odds, we are working in silos, we are making laws and procedures as we think the economy is. We do not know the other side of the story. But I'm very grateful that this forum has identified an area which is not only going to make us achieve the objective of financial inclusion, but as a tax officer, I'm really convinced that increasing the private credit is surely going to jumpstart the revenues, not only from this sector, but indirectly from the economy. There is hardly any second opinion on the issue. Unfortunately, so far, we have not been able to do that, and I appreciate the role of the Allied Bank, and I have had some private talks at some forum with with Tahir Saab, and I found him a very enlightened gentleman, a very professional man and a patriot who thinks in a manner which ultimately is destined to advance the cause of the nation. I will request, taking this opportunity, I request both the erstwhile colleagues of mine and the respectable, the elites of the private professionals in tax subject to advance the cause. We definitely have no private research in the area of taxation as to know exactly. I think we do not have a correct data. While I was looking at the graph in a cursive, and I wish I had seen your documents last night and had thought over it. But the very cursory look appears that we have no in homegrown studies on the subject. We do not have data on a number of areas where we need to further probe and develop our systems and our procedures as a tax collecting body. Now I'll be requesting them to help us reach out to the private universities also. I'm sure they are already doing. But your institutional research on your incomes is really a welcome step and will go a long way in developing the system. You have offered your service, Tahir, since Naqvi Saab is here. The Tax Reform Commission is the stalwart of the Tax Reform Commission, and again a stalwart of the Tax Implementation Commission, of which I am also a member. We are discussing these subjects, these issues in detail. But let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, particularly from the banking industry, that we interact with the industry through your bodies, through the Pakistan Banking Council. If at all we have an input in reforming the system, is either from the State Bank or from the body that is Pakistan Banking Council, PBA or something, you know. We do not have a direct access to the individual bankers. Really for me, today your offer is actually is a find of the day, because I'll be very pleased to interact with you, Tahir, if you are really putting forward the assistance to the FBR. Look, we do not have, even the FBR itself doesn't have a very credible, reliable research center. We are fast in the process of developing our databases. We are fast revamping and restructuring and remodeling our IT infrastructure. But as you know that in the government sector, it's very difficult to invest a lot in the IT sector. So we depend a lot on these kinds of private researches. I'm not going to say more because there will be a number of experts with their bodies. I'll be going to join some other meeting in the Directorate of Training of a similar nature. But I'm really obliged and thankful to you, sir, for giving me this opportunity. I appreciate the research done in this sector on the issue. There is no denying the fact, there is no two opinions on the subject that private credit is the stimulus in developing the economic structure. You know, by the banks, I've heard you and I share with you that there is an opinion in the country and in a very formal and important places that banks are hardly playing or perhaps playing a very little role in the development of this country. If they are earning money, I think they are obliged. We have a responsibility to earn money for our children, for our future. I think every human has the right to do so. But I believe simultaneously it creates a responsibility in the form of social responsibility to the society. And financial exclusion, as was shown by Tahir, is going to be a danger haunting us as a nation. So I am with you, sir, on the subject. and I will be calling you, I'll be requesting you, and we already have some indirect communication through Naqvi Saab, but I'm sure he's a professional already, with his hands are full with his own private work, but I'll be reaching out to you, and it has encouraged me to even reach out to other important banks. Right now, my team is in Karachi, and I will request them to go and also meet one of the public sector, the member operation and legal is there on some issue. I'll request them to have immediate meeting with the National Bank and Habib Bank, if possible, to get the first-hand information. I've been meeting a number of forums today on different events and different forum, and wherever I went, honestly, the crux of the matter, the crux of the discussion was a request to the FBR to somehow reduce taxation, despite you know that we are already a fiscally deficit country. It's the first time that a taxpayer, Allied Bank for me is a taxpayer, is showing me the way as to how to increase the tax revenue. This is a paradigm shift. This is a completely changed view of the sector, of the economy, of taxation. Sir, before I forget, let me have a word on the procedural predicaments or difficulties that you mentioned in taxation. I agree with you, but let me tell you, we have problems. We are a bureaucratic organization. We are a public sector organization. We are a resource-starved organization, despite the fact that we are a resource collector for the state. But let me tell you that despite all these petty odds, we have been trying our best to collect the maximum and to get the maximum. But at the same time, my request is to realize that against these odds, there has not been full-fledged cooperation on some issues. I hope I'm not denying the banking industry, that there hasn't been cooperation on some provision of law. I hope I'm not mentioning, but if I'm allowed, on Section 165, we had a lot of resistance. I know that banking industry needs to protect the secrecy and confidentiality of the transaction of their very valuable clients. But after all, taxation is also an equally important subject. Now it is for the experts to evaluate how to balance the two. It's a difficult job, but as long as we are determined, as we are, we shall reach out to the conclusion. Thank you very much. I wish I had a long time and a long discussion with the expert. It was a very golden opportunity. But you know the budget process is in the making, and it's very difficult for me to get out of the capital. But since the minister and the prime minister were out of the country, I find it an opportune moment to rush to Lahore and interact with my officer and with all the sectors. And this day, fortunately, coincided with my talk with Dr. Ikram. He's my ustad bhi hai, mera dost bhi hai, mera bhai bhi hai. So it was so difficult for me to resist this offer. So thank you very much, sir, and thank you if I have annoyed you. I think it was just like a friendly talk with my friends and nothing more than that. Thank you so very much, sir. Thank you.
I would like to request Mr. Tahir and Qureshi and Dr. Ishaq Saab to just come over here. We would like to give a small token of appreciation, a souvenir to Dr. Saab. Commercial obligors are basically interacting with upstream and downstream with vendors and suppliers who are availing informal credit and paying very, very high rates of income tax. So my message to my valued customers, especially from the commercial banking obligor side, is that please pass on the message that instead of paying market-based abnormal rates of interest, please educate all your suppliers and all your customers who are not availing formal credit to come into the mainstream, and even coming into the tax net, they can expand more, and they can, despite paying the tax, their bottom line and expansion will far exceed the current level of operations that they are undertaking. Now, to proceed on, I would like to request Ms. Huzaima Bukhari to elaborate more on the topic under discussion. Ms. Huzaima Bukhari, may I request everyone to give her a round of applause, please. Thank you.
We need to emphasize that if we together, along with the tax authorities, are able to generate substantial revenues, we ourselves would be the end beneficiaries. It's quite a pity that a big chunk of this nation is willing to pay 30% interest rate on credits which are taken from the private sector and not willing to come to the banks. Why? Just for one reason. They will be exposed. They will be documented. They will come in the eye of the revenue authorities. So they don't want that. People want to hide from the revenue authorities. So why not create a scene, create a system that will attract people rather than, make them shy towards the revenue. So our collective duty is to create a system that is going to be effective for the promotion of growth as well as collection of revenue. Why don't we go for companies? Why don't we go for corporatization? The main reason is the high rates of taxes. 35%, coming down to 30% is still a very high figure, because the corporate sector is the one which is actually churning out the main revenue. And if they are given incentive by lower rates of tax, then I'm sure the rate of employment would also increase. Economic growth will also take place. And then taxes are byproduct of economic growth. So the more growth we have, the more taxes will automatically generate. Our country, our people are the highest taxpayers in the whole world. They are most taxed nation, Pakistan. Almost more than 60 withholding tax provisions. Everyone is paying income tax. Everyone who pays something to the government wants to see something in return.
एक बड़ी तादाद जिसकी 4 लाख आमदनी भी नहीं है, चाहे वो बेवा है, हम 10% टैक्स उसका काट रहे हैं बैंक पे, वो भले उसकी कोई इनकम नहीं है, 4 लाख के पास भी उससे हम जो है वो इनकम टैक्स वसूल कर रहे हैं मोबाइल पर। तो शर्मनाक बात है, क्योंकि जो टैक्सेबल लिमिट में नहीं आता आप उससे क्यों टैक्स लेते हैं? ये तो मेरा ख्याल में कि जो हम में से सब लोग जानते हैं, आईने पाकिस्तान की खुली खिलाफ वर्जी है। दूसरा इसका पहलू वो है जहां लोग अपनी एक्चुअल इनकम पे टैक्स नहीं दे रहे हैं। अब ये दूसरा क्राइसिस है कि आपने कहा कि तुम नॉन फाइलर का टैक्स दे दो, वो बहुत खुश है। मिसाल के तौर पर मैं एज ए इम्पोर्टर भी पहले बहुत ज़्यादा अंडर इनवॉइसिंग करूँ, फिर सारे टैक्सेस आप पे पास ऑन कर दूँ, मुझे तो बहुत खुशी होगी। सो हम क्या कर रहे हैं कि बहुत सा टैक्स का बर्डन जो है वो इवन इनकम टैक्स में भी पास ऑन हमने कर दिया, और उसकी वजह से कुछ लोगों की लीगल इनरिचमेंट हो रही है, क्योंकि वो अपना टैक्स भी मुझ पे पास ऑन करके बैठे हुए हैं। पाकिस्तान का टैक्स पोटेंशियल 8 ट्रिलियन है। जब इसको हमने डेटाबेस में डालकर साबित किया और 2-3 बहुत बड़े इकोनोमेट्रिक्स को बुलाया कि आप ये डेटा डाल दें, उन्होंने किया, तो सडनली IMF कंट्री रिपोर्ट ने इसको उठा लिया और कहा कि पाकिस्तान का पोटेंशियल तो 6 ट्रिलियन है। तो ये तो हाफ भी नहीं इकट्ठा कर रहे FBR वाले। हमने स्ट्रक्चरल यानी कि ढांचे के अंदर जो इस्लाहात की ज़रूरत होती है उस पर ज़ोर दिया है, और उसमें हमारा सबसे पहला नुक्ता ये है कि पाकिस्तान के अंदर हमें एक नेशनल टैक्स एजेंसी बनानी चाहिए, क्योंकि आप 6 टैक्स एजेंसियां बन गई हैं। कोई इससे आप बात कर रहे हैं, वो कहता है जी मैं टर्मिनेशन पे टैक्स लगाऊंगा, कोई ओरिजिनेशन पे टैक्स लगाऊंगा। एक मुल्क के अंदर इन्हें ये इस बात का पता नहीं है कि आप किस तरह के कवानीन बना रहे हैं। क्या कोई भी सूबाई हुकूमत एक्स्ट्रा टेरिटोरियलिटी पे लॉ बना सकती है? खुद कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन का आर्टिकल 141 उन्हें मना कर रहा है, और पंजाब और सिंध कह रहे हैं कि हम दोनों तरह की सर्विसेज पे टैक्स लगाएंगे। आईने पाकिस्तान का एक सेक्शन कहता है कि इंटर प्रोविंशियल ट्रेड को आप किसी किस्म की रुकावट नहीं लगा सकते। अच्छे टैक्स एपलेट निज़ाम के होने का और जो इंडिपेंडेंट सही मानों में हो, क्योंकि अगर आपके यहाँ एक अच्छा इंसाफ का प्लेटफॉर्म नहीं होगा तो टैक्स लगाने वाले और टैक्स के देने वाले दोनों हमेशा इस बात का तयन नहीं कर पाएंगे कि उनमें से किसके राइट्स एंड रॉन्ग्स का मसला है।
टैक्स कलेक्शन का मेजर हिस्सा विद होल्डिंग है और विद होल्डिंग टैक्स से जनरेट होता है, और विद होल्डिंग टैक्स का सब्सटेंशियल हिस्सा बैंक्स कलेक्ट करते हैं और बैंक्स कलेक्ट करके पे करते हैं। तो बैंक्स का कंट्रीब्यूशन इस पूरी सिनेरियो में सब्सटेंशियल है। एक्चुअली टू बी ऑनेस्ट, इफ यू लुक एट रेवेन्यू कलेक्टिंग एजेंसी मुल्क में कौन सी है, तो रेवेन्यू कलेक्टिंग एजेंसी मुल्क में बैंक्स है। एंड मैनेजमेंट कैपेसिटी टू विलिंगली सपोर्ट reform program. This is something very important. The word willingly is the most important thing here. Mitigating the unsettling effects of frequent and ad hoc legal and administrative changes which provided opportunities for increased discretion and corruption, insufficient knowledge of taxpayers on their tax obligations, and decreased motivation to comply with tax demands. Sufficiently flexible administrative framework to respond to tax policy changes in terms of re-engineered systems, works practices and functions, infrastructure and maintenance management. Effective human resource management system and capacity development is strengthening the otherwise adversarial relationships between taxpayer and tax collector. Responsive IT system as an integral part of the FBR organization at all levels of administration. One major recommendation was that you need this to be headed by a professional person who could run it separately, not being a member of the FBR heading it. This change has taken place. Serious capacity building of staff at FBR level and including staff with right skill sets. Now, I like to share some facts with you. This is very, very relevant. These are the income tax returns filers starting from 2006-7 to 2016. This figure, the last column is now over a million. It's changed. 10th May figures are over a million now, which is there. But this is the scenario that we were 2.1 million at one particular stage, gone down, and we have almost a million tax filers which are there. And I'm using the word tax filers. Taxpayers, he is right. We are over-taxed country. As far as Pakistan is concerned, those who should not be paying taxes are paying taxes, and those who should be paying taxes are not paying taxes. This is the problem.
Thank you very much. अब हम सेरेमनी के इख्तिताम की तरफ चलेंगे। मैं तमाम मौजूद गेस्ट को रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा कि वो अगर नीचे आके एक स्मॉल सेरेमनी ऑफ सोवेनियर गिव अवेज पे